Paddy, it's such a pleasure of having you here. Before the World Championship, we had a conversation, and we already were very excited how the collaboration of your experience and in chess would it come through. So before we start, I would like to ask, once you knew that yesterday Gukesh became the champion, what were your first thoughts?
I don't think I had too many thoughts. I think I just was too overawed with emotions and of excitement and joy and ecstasy, and just knowing the amount of work and the amount of time that he'd put in, and going into that final moment, having very low expectations of a result happening, and then it happening so suddenly. It was like just a shot of like an overdose of adrenaline, excitement and enthusiasm from nowhere. It was just incredible.
Absolutely. You have been with so many sports. Most of them are spectator sports where crowds chant, there's a huge buzz, and there are reactions. In chess, it's not known for its crowd reactions, right? But when you saw Gukesh winning yesterday, there were chants all over Gukesh and there were crowds cheering. How did you take that in, and how do you compare it to a mainstream sport?
If I were to compare in terms of the size, the 2011 Cricket World Cup win,
Yes.
obviously you had 40-odd thousand people in the loudest stadium in the world screaming in the Wankhede Stadium, and we saw the result coming closer and closer, where last night there was dead silence inside the VIP, the viewing area, and we didn't see the results coming closer and closer. And if I were to be really honest, when Ding made the mistake and the realization set in, there was a gasp that went out, a silent gasp that went out in the room. And I don't know enough about chess, and you're not allowed to talk in the room, but I had to turn to somebody and say, what happened? Like, I know something's happened, but I don't know what, and then people said, no, Ding's made a mistake. And then I had the huge relief, because I knew something happened, but I didn't know what.
Wow. During this period, once the collaboration started, did you had the chance to look into chess history and learn about chess champions and about their mental state, and compare it to other sports which is physically more active sports?
So I knew in the 6 months I had working with Gukesh in the lead up to this, I was never going to become very knowledgeable in chess, and I didn't try. What I did do is I listened to podcasts of previous champions, listened to interviews with Magnus and with Gary Kasparov and with Vishy Anand. So just to understand a little bit about how chess world champions think, what's their process, how do they speak. So I could just get a little bit familiar, but I can't say I got familiar with chess. I just got a little bit familiar with champions' mindsets.
Okay. You have worked with the best in the sports in various fields. If you had to make like you remembered of someone when you see Gukesh, do you think of someone when you see Gukesh play?
Not so much when I see him play, but I think about him as a client. I've probably worked with, I would guess, over 350 athletes in the last 20 years from 20 different sports, and all pretty much at the highest level of the game. And Gukesh sits right at the top of the list in terms of the things that really impress me is when someone invests a lot of time into converting their talent into results. That's relatively impressive when an athlete achieves great success. But for me, that's only half of success. The other half is, can you be a really great human being? And things like having solid character, having real humility, having respect, being naturally respected and respectful. And for me, there's a couple of athletes I've worked with. I mean, the obvious one that comes to mind, because I've worked with him so much, is Rahul Dravid, who had pretty good talent, but he didn't have the talent of a Sehwag or a A.B. de Villiers but he worked so hard in converting his talent into the amount of runs he scored, but at the same time, a really incredible human being, both on and off the field. And for me, that's greatness. And Gukesh, I've listened to his interviews. I listened to the post-match interview last night. It was a masterclass in humility. He has an 18-year-old who is filled with emotion, just having won the World Chess Championship, an unscripted speech. And the first thing he does is spend 3-4 minutes respecting, playing tribute to his opponent. That was unscripted. And then when they asked, what did you do well? He spoke about God, he spoke about his parents, he spoke about his team, he spoke about other people, and he was pushed by the interviewers to speak about himself, and he continued to speak about the contributions of other people. That was a masterclass in humility. So for me, Gukesh is right up there in terms of, he is a world champion. There's very few of those, but he is a champion human being away from the board, and that for me is impressive.
Wow, well put. The tournament did not start very well for Gukesh. The first game was a very big setback. Did you had a chance to speak to him after the first game?
Gukesh, he sort of anticipated. We spoke about the fact that Magnus Carlsen in his first World Championship game was shaking on the board, and even I think made him drop to chess piece or something. And we accepted that if the greatest player in history can have a shaky start, for Gukesh not to put pressure on himself to think he needs to have an unbelievable first game. And we prepared we knew at some point the chance of him going down was very good at some point. We didn't know what was going to happen in the first game, but he was prepared for that. Like really well prepared to be behind in a game and behind in actually the scoreboard. So when it happened, it was a case of he is prepared, and I sat back and thought, well, let's see if his preparation now actually plays out. And it did play out. He went behind, he caught up beautifully in game 3, then he went ahead and scores are leveled again, and he constantly managed himself excellently within games and within the tournament overall. When he was ahead, he had a strategy. When the game was even or level, he had a strategy, and when he was behind, he had a strategy. And he implemented that strategy like a true world champion. He's a deserving world champion.
We saw after the win, he came to you, he hugged you, and he thanked you for coming. That's how much you meant mentally and physically for you to be here. Could you please share one of the occurrences during these 3 weeks that you met him and you had a nice conversation?
To be honest, when he hugged me afterwards was the first time I'd met Gukesh in person.
Oh.
We'd never met in person until after the game. We've only ever spoken on the phone.
Oh.
So that was an amazing, that we meet each other for the first time when he's world champion.
Wow. How was your experience like in this 6 months? Like what will you take away from like being associated with chess play? As you mentioned, you have learned, like listened to a lot of podcasts. Now you know a lot of things about chess that you were not that aware 6 months ago. What are your takeaways?
It's a good question. I think just off the top of my head, one of my big takeaways is that chess, in terms of the mental side of chess, is no different to the mental side of success in all sports, and it's actually no different to all of life. Okay. The principles of chess are prior to the principles of life, and I think even I think it was Gary Kasparov wrote a book, about chess and life, and the two really do mimic each other. So that was one, and the other is just the privilege of working with someone like Gukesh, who is such a consummate professional. He was amazingly coachable as a client. His self-awareness was incredible. The questions he brought to the conversations allowed the conversations to have such rich value because of the quality of the questions. He was open to exploring new topics. But also what was impressive was as a young 18-year-old, particularly in India where people tend to defer to authority, he didn't just take what I said and implement it. He discerned for himself what was relevant for him and his game and what wasn't. So even that, he was just wonderfully coachable and showed incredible maturity for an 18-year-old. And he is, he's only 18 by number and no other way.
Right, we are still in 2024 and mental health is not given the top priority when it comes to like in life, right? Physical health is always the priority, but mental health plays such a big role. You know about it, and before your collaboration, no one thought that a chess player can also need this. But we see that chess is the most unexpressive game. That in other sports you can shout, you can express, but we have seen chess players go out numb, and then maybe we don't see the expressions on the board that much. How important now? I think from today, after your collaboration, the history of chess, maybe players will look forward for mental coaches and mental trainings. How important do you think for young chess players from the beginning of their career to be mentally trained?
So I don't think chess players need it, but can it help them be 1 or 2%, manage their minds 1 or 2% better and more consistently through the ups and downs and over long games, long tournaments, long seasons, long years? Yes, I think it can help them. And it's through my experience in other sports who 20 years ago there was no such thing as a mental coach in cricket, and only the most forward-thinking and hungry to learn cricketers embraced mental coaching. Not because they needed it, because they were consummate professionals who decided, I want to explore every little way of being slightly better. So chess players don't need it, but can they benefit from it? Yes, without a doubt. Just like in life, do we need our own therapist or psychologist or counselor? No, most people don't need it, but can most people benefit from looking to be even better? The answer is yes.
Right. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure meeting you in person, and your spirit also gave us a lot of spirit and positiveness. And thank you so much for helping Gukesh in this journey. We are already looking forward to what you can do with the world of chess. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And again, I just thank Gukesh and his team and India for inviting me first to the Indian cricket party, and then earlier this year I was an invited guest at the Indian, the Olympic hockey campaign, and I'm so grateful to have been invited to Gukesh's party and be able to celebrate with him here in Singapore.
Great. Thank you once again.